Formula One is a sport bursting with drama and incredible prowess. How did Charles Leclerc clinch victories in Monza despite facing overwhelming odds? How did Nico Rosberg triumph over two world champions with identical machinery? And, most importantly, how does Max Verstappen consistently achieve what he does? Prepare to have your perceptions challenged, because the Max Verstappen you think you know is far more complex and captivating than you imagine. Max Verstappen dominates the Bahrain Grand Prix. Max Verstappen wins. Max Verstappen wins. Max Verstappen, you are a four-time world champion. That is a phenomenal achievement. You know what that is. Simply lovely. Now, I know I've spoken about Max many times before, but the man just keeps delivering after every video I make. Max is the embodiment of an all-you-can-eat buffet, he just keeps serving. But I'm done starting driver videos with pure praise. It's clear that Verstappen is among the greatest of all time in motorsports. We all know that. And if you disagree, keep your hands off me. So, I'm going to switch things up this time and begin this video by addressing the biggest criticisms leveled against Mr. Sid. People love criticizing Max for many different things: his temperament, his aggression, and a perceived lack of care. Max himself once famously quipped, "I don't care." How about that? While his temper is undeniably a weakness, leading to questionable decisions when he's boiling hot, it's important to remember that this intensity can also be his greatest strength. He sometimes lashes out with unnecessary anger, but there's a drive behind it. Max was raised in an intensely competitive environment, and you can't just race away that ingrained drive. At least be thankful he redirects his frustrations to other cars and not his family. However, the biggest complaint people have with Verstappen is how he supposedly makes F1 boring. This narrative gained traction since 2022. But in reality, even during his domination, Verstappen is actually one of the main reasons why F1 is so entertaining. Let's consider F1 if Max had never existed. In 2016, there would have been no Red Bull win in Spain, no dramatic seat swaps, and Mercedes would have dominated completely. In 2018, the thrilling crash between Daniel Ricciardo and Max would never have happened, nor the intense rivalry with Esteban Ocon, which would have been good for them, but undeniably boring for us. In 2019, Max was often the only driver truly challenging Mercedes. In 2021, there would have been no championship fight whatsoever. Max and Lewis fans would likely be getting along, but frankly, that sounds boring too. In 2022, perhaps Charles Leclerc would have had an easier time, and he's certainly been through enough. In 2023, Max utterly dominated Sergio Perez and had one of the best years ever. Anyone who criticizes that simply dislikes a winner if it's not their favorite driver. Looking ahead, 2024 would have been completely dominated by McLaren. And 2025 would have seen McLaren domination again, but thanks to Max Verstappen existing in our universe, the stakes in 2025 were so much higher because Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri have to face a lion with an insatiable hunger for victory. One of the key ways Max makes F1 so fun to watch is through his qualifying performances. Do you know how many surprise qualifying efforts this guy has pulled off? More than I could count even with extra fingers. In Monaco 2023, Max was down on Fernando Alonso in the first two sectors, but then he made it all up in the final one, snatching pole by milliseconds. To be fair, I understand the frustration. When Max took pole from Fernando by a mere fraction of a second, I found myself punching the air. But I can't deny, that's incredibly impressive. And don't even get me started on 2025. Despite McLaren having the faster car, Max secured pole position in Japan, Miami, Silverstone, and Saudi Arabia, where he stole it by a razor-thin margin. Then in Monza, he had provisional pole, only for Norris to take it away. But just 2 seconds later, Max snatched it back again. If pole position were a person, they would be Max Verstappen. Then came Baku, where almost every single driver crashed. Lando Norris didn't, but he still fumbled, getting out-qualified by a Williams. Meanwhile, Max proceeded to set pole as if his entire future depended on it. In my personal opinion, the championships from 2022 to 2025 deservedly belong to Max. You know perfectly well that if he were in a McLaren, the only thing that could stop him is Zak Brown sitting on the car, feeding Lando fries like the professional boss he is. Oh, and in Austin, after McLaren caused a civil war between their fans, Max secured pole again, as if his family's honor was at stake. Even if things don't go his way and Max loses championships in the near or distant future, which I know will lead some to prematurely label him washed, the fact remains that we still owe him for making F1 exciting. The thing about Max is, he can lose spectacularly and still make it entertaining. In Mexico 2025, in the middle of a championship fight, Max qualified 5th, but then he still sent it into turn 1, went lawn mowing, yet somehow ended up almost getting 2nd if it weren't for the spirit of Michael Masi possessing the steward's room. Now, the question people are always asking is, how is Max so good? Well, I've said this before, racing is in his blood, sweat, and tears. Max dives into every racing category. He likes to try different disciplines to test his skills in new ways. And one of his favorites is e-racing, a sim racing game that he's on 24/7. Seriously, as an example, consider Max Verstappen's schedule during Saudi Arabia 2024, sim race until 4 a.m. before qualifying, get pole position, go back to sim racing after 2 hours, and win both the F1 and sim race the very next day. This dedication to sim racing is what makes Max a far better driver than everyone else. He also dabbles in drifting, rallying, MotoGP, and endurance racing. Another motorsport Max tried which made headlines is GT3, a racing category that uses vehicles based on production cars. Max made his debut testing a Ferrari 296 under the pseudonym Franz Hermans to avoid media attention. As you can see, it worked wonderfully. But with that being said, here's my fully updated Verstappen nickname list: Franz Hermans, Mad Max, the Flying Dutchman, Max Verstappen, my personal favorite, Sid, Max Verstappen, gas station attendee. But back to GT3. After testing under Franz Hermans and unofficially breaking the lap record in May, Max finally competed in September. In qualifying, he had a near miss and had to overtake on the grass but still qualified 3rd. Then, in the race, he immediately took the lead, built a gap, handed the car to his teammate, and won his debut GT3 race at the Nürburgring with a 25-second gap. He caught everyone off guard. In second place was Jan Mardenborough, a sim racer whose story inspired the Gran Turismo movie. So, there were 2 big-name sim racers on the podium. Look who's laughing now, mainstream media. Video games cause violence. False. Forcing your son to be an F1 world champion does. Get it right. Another thing I like about Max that I was never able to cover in my other videos is how relatable he truly is. When Max isn't dominating on his sim racing setup, he plays other games, Minecraft, FIFA, and Call of Duty, where he often rages. He also watches other racing categories, even playfully quipping, "You can't park there, mate." Back to sim racing, in a 2024 mental health charity race, Max adorned his car with stickers that were pure art. Allow me to analyze this quickly. On the left, he put George Russell as Woody, a 10-second penalty, Sid the Sloth, Minecraft imagery of him using a diamond helmet and a pickaxe with a speech bubble saying, "My pickaxe is broken," and a photo that I think is from his Miami 2023 post. On the hood, he put a photo of Lando Norris struggling in Brazil, Minecraft TNTs, a McLaren logo, and various other humorous posts. The rear wing, I believe, had a long text discussing the McLaren MCL38. Pause if you need to read it. If it wasn't clear from the start, Max is just as quirky as many of us. So, thank you, Max, for making me look like a normal person. My point is, this sloth isn't an industry plant trying to appeal to everyone. Max is authentic, and that's why he's so popular. For instance, in Monza 2025, McLaren swapped positions because Lando had a slow pit stop, which I think is just the lamest thing ever. McLaren seems to love emotionally manipulating their drivers, and this makes the races boring. But then you have Max just laughing at it. Norris and Piastri have swapped places, just because Lando had a slow stop. It's not our business, but I guess it keeps it fair between the drivers in terms of championship. At this point, McLaren doesn't deserve it. And allow me a little rant here because of McLaren. I'd rather 2025 be dominated by Verstappen. McLaren has been too busy trying not to hurt their drivers' feelings, even when I know that they know letting their drivers race is the better option. But no, they want to micromanage every move Lando and Oscar make, like parents watching their child walk for the first time. I'm looking at you, Zach Brown. Lando is in his mid-20s, he doesn't need your maternal instincts, damn it. Because every time Oscar would fight Lando, McLaren would say, "Oscar," feedback from the pit wall. The maneuver in turn 4 with the front lockup was too marginal. We can't do that again. And then tell them to swap positions through emotional blackmail, saying, the way to win a championship is not by yourself, it's with the team. You're going to need Oscar. McLaren gave the call to Oscar Piastri to prioritize the highest McLaren driver. Team order issued. Lando Norris given back the position. Do you think McLaren are favoring Lando over Oscar? And if so, does that help you? Absolutely. It even got to a point where, in Singapore 2025, Oscar turned off Zach's radio. Oscar, back-to-back champions. Good race. Tough race. Thank you for that valid crash out. Also, speaking about McLaren, since a lot of you have been wondering why it's taken me a hot minute to upload, it's because I've been receiving threats from McLaren fans. But instead of running to a different continent, like a certain someone, I'm going to read them out. Here's one from Gerard W., a Lando fan, making a disturbing reference to a tragic event because I'm biased towards Oscar. I think he forgot the part where I said Lando is capable of being a champion as much as Oscar, as long as they don't fumble. And here's another one from Will, an Oscar fan who wrote an entire manifesto because I apparently cursed Oscar with a video. Not a single prediction was made in this video, but fine, I'll do you a favor too, Will. And for the Verstappen fans watching this, I'm going to predict that these 4 drivers are going to have the worst careers over the next 10 years. So when a reverse jinx happens, everyone's happy. But if I end up right, you were responsible for this, Will. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the man you want to get. I want to start seeing some hashtag "this is all Will's fault." But back to Max. Let's not forget he's doing all this at Red Bull, a team many perceive as difficult to join, and if drivers do, it's often under immense pressure. Max has had multiple crashes, some due to team issues in 2025 at Silverstone in Spain. Even the Carb team looks healthier. So, given that, no one wants to touch a Red Bull contract, and that's a big issue for them. But thankfully, I'm here with a solution. Dear Red Bull shareholders, I present to you my Red Bull recruitment ad, Rolling Red Bull. A place where dreams stay as dreams, ambitions stay as ambitions, but at least you'll be ambitious for your whole life. And a place where you can experience the sheer thrill of running P17 behind a Haas or totaling your car. But in Red Bull, we won't fire you for being a difficult personality or a toxic mess. You will only get fired for underperforming. So, if you want a team focused purely on performance, Red Bull is your home. Sign that contract now, as it's time for you to play your part in completing Max Verstappen's shadow. Verstappen is truly one of the good ones. He can also multitask remarkably. Remember, he's winning F1 championships while managing team internal politics, attending media days, being a partner, committing to his sim racing team, and engaging in other sports. So, all this brings us to the final question: what's the one thing Verstappen can't do? I mean, apart from the obvious, have a traditional childhood to look back on, type without being a T-Rex, or not get frustrated in Call of Duty. Honestly, it's tough to find fault with Max, you have to nitpick so hard. And that's already a sign he's super likable. If I really had to think of something, I suppose the one thing Max Verstappen can't do is be as disappointing as McLaren.